Om Shri Sai Ram. My humble pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagwan. On this special occasion, we have an eminent speaker, Sister Karuna Munshi. Karuna Sarup Munshi grew up in a Sai-infused environment in Kashmir since the late 1960s. She graduated from the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning with a BA and MA Philosophy, securing a first rank and a gold medal. She is an experienced journalist and a communications expert who has held various eminent positions in India and Canada. Currently, she serves as the director of the Sri Sathya Sai Vidyavahini program at Prashanti Nilayam, an education portal for empowering rural teachers with values, integrated academic content, training, and teaching aids. Before this, Sister Karuna served Radio Sai for over a decade, producing programs and documentaries, writing feature articles, interviewing devotees, and hosting live shows. She concurrently taught English at the Sri Sathya Sai Mirpuri College of Music for 2 years. Prior to moving to Puttaparthi with her family in the year 2009, she served the Sathya Sai School of Canada at Toronto as its secretary for a decade and held various office bearer positions in the Sai movement in Canada for over 2 decades as Center Secretary, SSE Group 3 Guru, and Youth Coordinator. Sister Karuna and her siblings and their children are former Sai students. She has addressed Sai groups globally and interacted with devotees from all over India and abroad. She is widely traveled and yet she feels most at home when she is in her natural habitat at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Baba, the divine founding chancellor of her alma mater and the love of her life. Let us enjoy this session. Jai Sai Ram.
Om Shri Sai Ram. I hope everything is loud and clear. Can you confirm it if my volume is okay?
Yeah, Sai Ram, just clear.
Thank you. Let us begin by offering our collective salutations to the Mother Divine. At her lotus feet, I place my loving pranams, my heart, my soul, my all, and my undying love and my deep, deep gratitude. Respected elders, dear sisters and brothers, loving Sai Ram and Dasera greetings to all of you from the divine valley of Prashanti Nilayam, the spiritual powerhouse of the universe. I hope everyone's doing well and staying healthy because we are all, after all, going through some very trying times. So this evening, I thought I will start with the story of the warrior princess whose victory or Vijayam, or precisely whose big Vijayam we are supposed to be celebrating today. She goes by many names depending on her mood and her mode of operation. Tonight, let's just call her Shakti. Lately, Shakti has been a busy girl. And like most self-aware women, she has been busy doing what ladies do best, fighting for the causes that we believe in. Not through an online petition or a war of words on Twitter. You know, you guys are from Mumbai, such things happen there. But Shakti is fighting her war through an intense battle involving all the elements within and around at multiple levels. This is serious stuff. I'm afraid even the superheroes from Avengers can't match what she's up against. So here's a quick report of what's been keeping her up over the past 9 days. And here it goes. For 9 nights, the goddess fought, and she fought with valor, smarts, and strategy. She had a game plan with specific and measured outcomes to achieve. One demon to vanquish each night. That was her personal target. And she prioritized using her infinite wisdom. On the first night, Shakti quelled, guess who? Kama, the demon of lust. On the second, she decided it was time to extinguish Krodha, the demon of anger. Then, on the third, she dispelled the demon of attraction or moha. She then shattered Lobha, the demon of greed. On the fifth night, Shakti came face to face with the demon Mada and vanquished pride. Hers was an exhausting task, undaunted and undefeated, with an iron resolve to exorcise all her demons. She continued on her mission to vanquish many more. On the sixth night, Shakti confronted the swirling enemy named jealousy, Matsara, and reduced it to nothingness. Then, still smiling with the energy of beauty, she went forward and smote the ugliness of Swartha, the demon of selfishness. On the eighth night, she terminated Anyay or injustice. On the ninth night, using only her kindness, she banished Amanvata, the dreadful demon of cruelty. Then, on the morning after the ninth night, finally she was about to rest when she realized that her most difficult foe was still upon her. You know what they say, a woman's job is never done. So, what exactly did Shakti do, you wonder? Well, she simply sat in the lotus position, laid down all her weapons, and with a gentle sigh and a quiet smile, she dissolved the final demon, Ahankara, her ego. Phew! Can you imagine what a battle this was? Dear sisters and brothers, today we are here to celebrate her victory, and how shall we do so is something we should be asking ourselves. What would be an appropriate victory party? This warrior princess, Shakti, gave it her all to restore balance, equilibrium, and peace. How shall we mark her awesome achievement? And guess what? Apparently, she's been nursing what is called a repeat action injury because she's quite fed up of doing this role over and over again. Turns out she has been doing this every year, several times a year, especially so during the spring and autumn, or Vasant and Sharad Navratris. Much like a reboot on your computer, she's assigned this task by her project manager, the creator, to go and delete all the trash files, block the spam, renew the security software to keep hackers and viruses away, and reset the operating system of the universal balance by restoring harmony in us and around us, by bringing nature into a state of normalcy. Now, let's not forget that she's a feisty, unrelenting, focused force of nature on a mission. When I refer to Shakti as a force of nature, I mean it literally and metaphorically, because she's a force to reckon with and that of nature. The ancients appreciated her role in renewal and restoration and celebrated it. Over time, we embraced the celebration, but we forgot the deeper significance about the renewal, about the restoration part behind her arrival ever so often into our lives for full 9 nights. That is why every Navratri for 9 days, we welcome Goddess Shakti into our homes, into our pandals, our housing societies, our temples, our Golu altars, and we deify her as Goddess Durga, as Lakshmi Ji, and as Mata Saraswati. She becomes the presiding deity at each of these venues, and we deck her with jewels and silks, and we worship her with flowers, fruits, incense. We serenade her with music and dance, with chants and mantras. But then, where does the goddess go on day number 10? MIA, missing in action. Where is she? Aren't we supposed to internalize her by allowing the form to become the formless energy that propels our lives, our thoughts, our choices, our destinies? She's supposed to be becoming us, or not. Dashera is derived from 2 words, Dasha and Hara, Sanskrit words. Dash is 10, Hara is a defeat. She's done single-handedly the task of defeating ego, cruelty, injustice, lust, anger, greed, pride, jealousy, attachment, and selfishness. Hence, Vijay Dashami. Vijaya means victory over the 10 bad qualities. Since Shakti has been so busy with the annihilation of these enemies, we celebrate her victory, but then there is a basic existential question that needs to be answered. Does Shakti not live with us every day in the form of the women around us, as our mothers, as the women in our lives, as a wife, a daughter, a sister, a co-worker, and even our maid servant. The same warrior princess who is a deity in the spiritual realm, how is it that she becomes a commodity in our movies, in our media, in our clubs, in the horrors that we hear about, in the highest number of crimes against women that are committed in a country whose culture places the feminine principle on the highest pedestal during Navratri? So the celebrations that are marked with bhajans and parayanams and kirtans to glorify the goddess Shakti in her various forms occupy the spiritual domain of our life, like one separate compartment. Yet, in the social, the political, the cultural, and everyday mundane department of our life, we, the same worshippers of Durga Ma, worry about the safety of our daughters and our sisters. This bipolarism of our times as a society does not add up. I hope you agree with me on that. So how can our celebration be true and meaningful when women's voices are still relegated to the background during decision making and their safety remains a matter of concern in most situations? Meanwhile, we are all, without exception, living through some extraordinary times. We are all reeling under the COVID curfew and its many restrictions and dreadful possibilities. Till a few months ago, till March of 2020, we used to enjoy living in a free country. Perhaps we didn't realize the value of that wonderful blessing where we could move freely, meet up friends, have satsangs under the same roof, unlike how we are doing it now. Today, everything is virtual, not actual. Since time immemorial that I can remember, the Veda Purusha Sapta Jnana Yagna in the Purna Chandra Auditorium of Prashanti Nilayam was the place to go for a heavy duty internal system upgrade, a spiritual recharge. My personal favorite will always be the experience of sitting in the PC auditorium with the chants booming from Vedic Pandits and the Mandir Veda group, and the adorable high-pitched baby voices of the primary school children who used to sing along, chant the Vedam along, while the flames were leaping up and consuming the sacred offerings. And then there is this priest who's constantly performing sun salutation and pradakshina circumambulation around Swami's majestic throne on these dais. This is the special Navratri throne. On the lady's side, a priest and his wife would continuously perform Devi Puja with kumkum. The sights of all the orange silk of the priest, of the aroma of the organic ingredients being offered in the yagna, exactly as per the grammar of the Vedas, just to inhale that sacred fragrance emanating from the smoke of the yagna, that was such a mystical moment we all have experienced. This year too, despite the COVID, I'm happy to report the yagnam happened exactly as Swami has laid it out, with the same perfection, with the exact same attention to Vedic detail and the same grandeur. I was myself in the PC auditorium wearing a mask and sitting like 2 feet away from everybody on all four sides. It was very well organized. But we were missing Swami students, those little cute children who come with those perfect vibhuti bindis in their whites, and they sit and they chant all the Vedam with the priests, and we missed all of them, but I'm sure we were able to watch it over Radio Sai. But dear sisters and brothers, is this how life is to be lived? Is this the new normal? I just hope not. Meanwhile, the rest of us have been complaining, as you may know, I don't know what your situation is, this work from home has become very tough for many of us. And the slowdown in the business and economic activity due to COVID has resulted in a lot of difficulties. Just give me a second, please. And especially for women who are having a very hard time balancing their work, because the housework has increased, and for women, they are caught between the frying pan and the laptop, and it's become very, very hard. And many of us are facing serious economic difficulties because of the economic downturn. Not everyone has a fixed income, steady income coming, and those who are dependent on self-employment or business, they are facing a very difficult time. So in face of these health-related, economic, spiritual, emotional distress that the world is going through, What exactly should you and I be celebrating on this Vijay Dashmi, and what heartwarming and inspiring yarn am I expected to dispense to you, my dear sisters and brothers of Thane of Amchi, Mumbai? Where shall we begin is my dilemma. So I decided it's best that we stick to the facts, hardcore basic data. So if anyone asked us to generate a grade sheet, an objective data-driven report card of all of us to rate our performance as inhabitants of this beautiful planet that we have inherited, would we pass? Let's be honest, it's time for a reality check. No sugarcoating, no gentle coaxing. Let's read our performance as it is. It's time to face the truth. As a collective whole, let's examine our lives. For all the choices we have been making so far, for all the digital inputs we consume through our senses, for all the safe sanctuary that we have given to the same 10 bad guys that our Lady of Valor Shakti dealt a blow to, we have actually harbored her enemies in our hearts and in our minds. Now, on what basis can we complain about the natural upheavals that we are facing today in the form of the calamities, the biological warfare, this deadly revolt from Mother Nature? Aren't we the ones who have shamelessly and relentlessly plundered, choked, dishonored Mama Nature in every possible form or fashion? If she's upset, then what is there to celebrate? Perhaps an apology from the heart and a commitment to course correct our lifestyle is a good place to start. Beloved Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba tells us that it is most essential to worship nature, a practice which is part of all ancient cultures. This reverential attitude will also ensure that we do not misuse Mother Nature. But how is the worship of nature related to the worship of the Divine Mothers? What is the relationship between the Devis, that is Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Prakriti? Let me quote Swami. Swami says, and this is a discourse from 1992, September 27th, Bhagwan says, Prakriti or nature is made up of three qualities, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Saraswati represents the Sattva Guna or serenity. Lakshmi represents the Rajoguna or activity. And Mata Durga represents the Tamoguna or destructiveness. As Prakriti is made up of these three qualities of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, to get control over nature and to receive the grace from nature, man has been offering worship to Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. Swami says, these are not goddesses, but deified symbols of the three qualities. This Prakriti is made up of these three qualities, and the worship of this Prakriti is the very purpose of human life. Now, several takeaways, which I will come to, but let's be clear. Mata Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati are not goddesses, but deified symbols of the three qualities of what Bhagwan is reminding us. They are goddesses. They're not those beautiful ladies who, we have this mental image of these beautiful ladies wearing some Sabyasachi style saris, exquisite jewelry, and they're posing for beautiful portraits for Ravi Verma to paint. Although we love and revere those images, and no doubt, Jai Mata, and let's not, but I think it's time for us to get past our fixation only with the form and move on to the essence. Now that we have learned that nature is a composite of these three attributes or gunas, and each Devi represents one of the gunas, how should the three goddesses be worshipped? Is it enough that we offer them worship during the 9 days and do all the ceremonial rituals? Or is there something more subtle to this Devi Puja? Actually, if you think, there are many, many layers of complexity associated with the celebration and the symbolism. How did Swami combine all of them into a seamless working model? And by the way, my dear sisters and brothers, my discussion is not a gender parity issue any longer. Although it may have sounded like it earlier, it is not. It applies to all our brothers as much as it does to the sisters in the Sai family. Because every person has the same Devi Shakti within them in the form of the three gunas. Their gender, our gender, does not come in the way of manifesting the divinity within us. All humanity represents nature or Prakriti. The caring nature in each person, be it a man or a woman, is the presence of the Devi Tattva or the feminine principle in our lives. There is only one Purusha. the alpha male, and that is Brahman, or the supreme God. So this seemingly intricate and complicated relationship between nature, God, and man, why don't we deconstruct it step by step? Let's start with the first one, Mata Durga. Mata Durga, also known as Parvati, is the original warrior princess. She destroys the dark and the dysfunctional because without de-weeding, we can't cultivate afresh. Given her dynamism, she represents the tamoguna or destructiveness. Durga Ma represents our determination or the resolve to transform. She dwells in each one of us as our Ichha Shakti. Those of us with the strong determination have a healthy force of Durga element driving us. For example, if you take a resolve, I'm going to maybe get off white sugar and cut down my carbs and lose 5 kilos over the next 3 months, and you stick to your resolve by your regular exercise and watching what you eat, strong dose of Durga predominating there. Very good. That's your determination. Of the 3 yogas, Devi Durga epitomizes karma or action. She is the doer, action-oriented, positive action-oriented. Now, how did Swami introduce his young, innocent students to the Durga power within them and encourage them to tap into it? Now, think about it. How do you make something so profound into a bite-sized, easy to digest little snack for little children? Swami initiated the tradition of Grama Seva or village service during Navratri. So let's revise. Durga personifies Tamoguna, Ichha Shakti or determination to transform. She is action-oriented, hence Karma Yoga. In Prashanti, this energy plays out in the form of the Grama Seva, where we visit the needy. The first 3 days of the Navratri are dedicated to Durga Ma. And even though we may not know, in Sanatan Dharma, there's a deep reason and a rhyme. And by rhyme, I mean literally behind everything we do. For example, when we sing the bhajan, Jai Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Sai Jagan Mata, we call out the mother in a sequence, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. We don't say Jai Saraswati, Lakshmi, Durga, or Lakshmi, Durga, Saraswati, and so on, because then it doesn't fall in this natural meter and it kind of jars. And the reason when we sing Jai Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati sounds, it flows like a river, is because the 3 energies operate in sync with the natural sequence, because we're singing it and there's a flow in the meter. So our meter is not force fitted. Otherwise, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Durga would sound jarring because it's against the natural order. That is the level of profundity and gravitas there is in everything that our Swami has set in motion for us. And it's seriously mind-blowing stuff made easy for dummies like us. So after the first 3 days given to our Ichha Shakti or determination representing the Tamoguna and Karma Yoga, this Super Shiro, Durga, has a fierce beast for a vehicle, and she's armed with some effective weapons of targeted destruction. What does she like to destroy? The decaying and the dysfunctional, so that she can make room for fresh, clean renewal to happen. And in Prashanti Nilayam, when we elevated the hunger, poverty, and hopelessness of the villagers with delicious, sumptuous prasadam, with new clothes, with bhajan singing and respectful giving, we brought a smile and a new hope in their lives. This force of nature is what we refer to as Durga. At this point in time, I'd like to share with you a very special I prayed to Swami because Mr. Vardarajan told me we must have some nice experiences and all, and I didn't have any personal experiences of Navratri to share, which were like mind-blowing or anything. So I prayed to Bhagwan to guide me what I may share, and I was immediately guided to this interview I have done on Radio Sai many years ago with the devotee, and I will tell you about her in a bit. This devotee and her husband had a little bit of a disagreement about her wish to conduct a Laksharchana in her house for the second time. And hers was a very strenuous Laksharchana. She's from Bangalore. She wanted to do some 20 to 25 Lalita Sahasranama, which each cycle has 1008 names of the goddess every day, which meant she was going to do this for 8 to 9 hours of puja daily. It's a very elaborate ritual, and they wanted to do it for like 11 days, I believe. And she also had a very severe back problem, and she had done it once before. So when she discussed it with her husband, he felt it was not a realistic thing to do because her health was not so strong to take up such a rigorous sadhana. And then they decided that when they went to, he told her better, since he couldn't convince her, better ask Swami. So after some days, they got an interview, and the interview, the moment she had an opportunity, she asked Swami if she may perform this puja. And Swami's immediate answer was, have you discussed it with your husband? Is your husband okay with it? Has he given you permission? So, he made sure that when you do something so sacred, there has to be mutual consent and agreement between a couple. And then she also asked Swami something very, very interesting, which I've never heard anyone else ever ask. She said, Swami, she wanted to also have a full darshan of the Devi. And I'll tell you about that in a bit. So after this interview, this family went on a pilgrimage to Vaishno Devi in Katra. And as she was going up the mountain on a palanquin, because she had a health issue, she was constantly chanting the Lalita Sahasranama and reflecting on its meaning. And Swami had told her, you must pick one name of the goddess that really appeals to your heart, and you must chant it with a lot of love. And her wish in taking this pilgrimage was, when I'm not physically fit, how am I going to do this puja? I leave it to you. And Swami, I really want to do this puja. It was going to be 11 days with some 12,000 archanas, 11-day puja, 12,000 archana, I think 1,25,000 cycles. And on the final day, they had to perform the Purnahuti. So now I want to quote from that interview what this devotee has said, and what I'm saying are her words. She says, and I quote, I must also tell you that during the interview with Swami, when I was seeking his permission, I had told him that I wanted to see Devi Swarupa Durga Ma in her full form. He then looked at me for a long time without blinking and asked, can you see God with these eyes? He then said, I will give you drishti, or a special vision or capability for beholding the Divine Mother. And she said she thought about those words, but they were not on her mind when she and her husband decided they did the Laksharchana some days later. And at that time, the words she was not thinking of them. On the last day of the Laksharchana, she says, and I quote again, when I was sitting and watching the Homakunda, it was a pit of the sacrificial fire. It was about 3 feet tall. I suddenly saw Goddess Durga sitting on the lion. With each ahuti or offering that my husband was putting in the fire, Goddess Durga's tongue would come out and take the ahuti and go back in. For a minute, I was in a state of shock. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But then, after a while, I really started enjoying the fact that whatever was being offered to Devi was indeed being accepted. Only I could see her. She was in the Simha Vahini form. She was seated peacefully on a lion on the edge of the bricks of the Homakunda, or the pit for the sacrificial fire. Only the tongue came out to take in the ahuti or the offering and would go back. The whole image was about 3 feet. I can't explain what I felt. And that particular day, before the Havan started, I could literally feel the presence of God in the house. Every day after puja, we would shut the door at night and open it early in the morning at 4 o'clock to start preparation. That particular day, I felt there was somebody inside. I was a little scared to open the door of the puja room. I just called my husband, made some noise to shoo whatever was inside, and then I opened the door. I was probably not ready for that particular moment. I regret why I felt so scared, but of course, it was a different experience of seeing her in the Homakunda. It was bliss, something so divine. You could feel God's presence everywhere. I love the Devi Durga form. With that, I am happy to tell you that this is an experience of a devotee from Bangalore. Her name is Mrs. Madhuri Naganand, and you can read it in Heart to Heart for yourself. The name of this article is Deep and Divine Devi Connection. Deep and Divine Devi Connection. And her name is Mrs. Madhuri Naganand. And incidentally, this is a joint interview with her husband, Mr. S.S. Naganand, who happens to be a member of the Sri Satya Sai Central Trust. You can read it for yourself and read it in its entirety. It is such an interesting and inspiring interview, which reminds us that God will manifest before us as we worship him or her or that. And I just especially liked what Swami kept look. She said without blinking, Swami looked at her in the interview room and said, "Can you see God with these eyes? I will give you the drishti." And that's like your internal vision. We can be seeing things with our physical eyes, and there's another set of eyes in the heart which let you see things beyond the phenomena. And I think that's the gift he gave it to her. So I would urge you to read that interview in Heart to Heart on Radio Sai. Now, the next goddess we worship is Mother Lakshmi. If Durga is the warrior princess, Lakshmi Devi is the queen of infinite resources. She's the one who provides us with the means to fulfill our determination to transform. She holds many portfolios: health, energy, time, mind space, and most importantly, finance, which are necessary to transform the good intentions represented by Durga into acts of worship. Lakshmi Devi represents Rajoguna or activity. She allows us to achieve our resolve by directing our resources. By this, I refer to our time, our energy, our grains, our ghee, our homam samagri, our wood, our silks, our ability to engage the Vedic Pandits, offer them due respect, hospitality, silk clothes, divine dakshina, to do what? To perform the yagna. The key word here is perform or kriya shakti. And perform it how? Perform it with bhakti or devotion. Mahalakshmi represents kriya shakti and bhakti yoga. When it comes to what we do in Prashanti Nilayam, it is not just any yagna or sacrifice that happens here in Prashanti Nilayam, dear sisters and brothers, but the mother, or I should rather say the grandmother of all yagnas. It is known as the Veda Purusha Sapta Jnana Yagna. The scale, the scope, the strictest adherence to the Vedic grammar defines the yagnas that Bhagwan has revived in Prashanti Nilayam in the Kali age. Organizing and executing the same with the grandeur and the majesty and the Vedic meticulousness is a story by itself. And if time allows, we'll go to it at a later time. But needless to say, it's a huge task to plan, coordinate, and execute it. No PhD from Wharton, Harvard, or anywhere can teach us the workflow associated with the Prashanti Nilayam Yagna. Yet, our Yagna and its coordination and planning make for an ideal case study for any management school. That is because God had to assume a human form and guide his instruments step by step on how to go about doing it. And the pilot project of the Veda Purusha Sapta Jnana Yagna was personally launched by Swami 7 decades ago. It is purely his grace that even today the same goes on as per the standards he had personally set in place. So let's therefore recall the second set of 3 days of Navratri, which are devoted to Devi Lakshmi, the epitome of Rajas Guna. She represents Kriya Shakti. She provides the resources to achieve the good intention or the resolve that Durga Ma represents. Lakshmi Mata is aligned with the Bhakti Yoga. And in Prashanti Nilayam, Swami has introduced her to us through the Veda Purusha Sapta Jnana Yagna. This tradition of the Navratri is extraordinary in many ways. It's a rare blessing to actually witness it, to inhale the fragrant smoke that emanates from the fire, to have the sacred water sprinkled on us with those little grass brooms on the final day, and to have the sound waves from the chanting touch us and enter our being through our listening. It's a very, very elevating experience. So, but I'm sure yagnas everywhere are powerful. So what is so special or different about our yagna? The Veda Purusha Sapta Jnana Yagna of Prashanti Nilayam, how does it stand out? Simple. What is the purpose of each yagna? Every yagna is performed with the goal in mind. Now, why did the Paripurna avatar of the Kali age start such an important yagna? Was it to amass wealth, to pray for victory over enemies, to extend his kingdom, to beget more progeny, name, fame over 7 lokas? Jai Sai Ram, none of that. True to what Bhagwan did all his life, the only purpose of this yagna is Vishwa Shanti and Loka Kalyan, world peace and welfare of humanity. 108% selfless as Bhagwan's entire life, as selfless as everything he did every single day of his presence on earth in that particular body. He only gave, he only blessed us, he only guided us, and even today he continues to do that. We know from his own declaration that the supreme being or the cosmic consciousness assumed a human form as his divine worship Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba with specific agenda. Number one, Dharma Sthapana or the establishment of righteousness. Number two, Vidvat Poshana, that is the protection and promotion of Vedic scholars. Number three, Veda Samrakshana or the protection and promotion of the Vedas. And then God has a default task. He can't escape that one. That's just natural. Bhakta Rakshana or protecting his devotees. So the first three are so interconnected, Dharma Sthapana, Vidvat Poshana, and Veda Samrakshana. And Swami has said that at the end of the British Raj, by the time, they had plundered our country and left, and the sorry state of all the royal families of India, who were the original patrons of the Vedic Pandits, the repositories of this Dharma, the interpreters of Dharma, there was a pathetic condition in which most of the Vedic scholars were, and they were running for petty jobs just to feed themselves and survive. Bhagwan took human form to ensure that this twin object of Vidvat Poshana and Veda Samrakshana is immediately taken care of. And he came with a grand design. Swami was about to visit the Godavari area, and because the Godavari basin is the home, traditionally the home of classical learning in Andhra Pradesh, someone had suggested to Swami, when you're going there on a visit, why don't you attend a yagya? And Swami said, so casually, Swami used to make it seem so simple. He said, because that area is called Konasimha or Delta area of Godavari, where a lot of Vedic scholars used to be traditionally trained. Swami said, my Simha or area is not just limited to Konasimha. It is a Veda Simha, all areas where Vedas are revered. So they decide, he said, why don't we do it in Prashanti Nilayam instead? And instead of, and then someone said, we'll bring scholars from Godavari Basin, and Swami allowed for that. But he also said, bring more scholars from Bangalore, from Hyderabad and Banaras. So the first one that began, I think 74 years ago to date in 1946, that one, for the first time, these scholars, they didn't know which young person, they didn't know Swami was God. The Veda Purusha was inviting them to his lotus feet. These lucky people were invited to this remote place called Prashanti Nilayam to perform the first grand yagna. And that is how the story of the Veda Purusha Saptagyana Yagna dates back to 74 years ago. Today, the same tradition has only grown in majesty, in grandeur, in sincerity, in prayer. If only you were in the PC auditorium this morning, you would have seen how nicely the priest, I wish if you have missed it on Radio Sai, I urge you go back and watch it. How nicely the priest prayed to Swami to protect the world from this coronavirus and to protect all humanity, all forms of life, all nature. It was beautiful. And to see how wonderfully the yagna was conducted in Prashanti and the way the people were handled, I was surprised to see, although we have so many restrictions in place that people visiting from outside cannot stay overnight in the ashram and so on, the turn up was huge, and yet everybody was maintaining their distance, wearing their mask and being very disciplined. And the yagna went on as beautifully as it ever could, as it did when Bhagwan was physically present. So in conclusion, what I want to tell you is that Prashanti Nilayam has the resolve. Prashanti Nilayam has the resources, Durga and Lakshmi. Prashanti Nilayam has the rationality or the wisdom, that is Mata Saraswati, to keep up its avatar assigned duty towards universal welfare and well-being or Loka Kalyan Vishwa Shanti. That is why, my dear sisters and brothers, Prashanti Nilayam is and will always remain the spiritual powerhouse of the universe. In this tiny town, the divine vibrations emanate with far-reaching impact on the destiny of humanity, of nature, and their relationship. Brought upon this earth with such selfless prayers than anyone can imagine. We also Swaha with our prayers, and our prayer is always simple. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. May all the beings in all the worlds be happy. And this yagna of looking after humanity, today Swami gave us a little pat on the back with this wonderful news that the Sri Sathya Sai Central Trust has been granted a special consultative status by the United Nations. And this is such a huge deal for all of us, that this news came on this auspicious day of Dasara, where we will be in a collaborative capacity with the UN, and the timing of it could not have been better. So I'm sure your Samiti will share this news with you, and you will be hearing it soon. And it will it's already up on Radio Sai, and I hope you will hear it. Now, having spoken about the, just give me a second. Sorry about that. My laptop was having a little bit of an issue. So with this wonderful news, we know that we will continue to collaborate at a global rate. Bhagwan is being recognized, the divine name, the triple S insignia is being recognized as the mantra for world peace, as the chant or the passcode for ensuring the well-being of everyone, because we all work with this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam being our life's motto. And with right now, if you go into the ashram, you can still smell the aroma of the organic herbs that are put into this fire. It's so beautiful. And I want to just share with you this small personal experience. Yagna began on 19th of October, the first day. And on 18th, I was having a stressful moment, as I tend to have for, I don't know why, at office sometimes. And I was walking in the lobby of my office, and I started to smell the samagri, the yagna samagri. And my office is like several blocks away from the Purnachandra auditorium. But I'm guessing that the sweet dedicated Sevadal must have been sorting the yagna samagri. That's why so many blocks away in the lobby of our office of Vidya Vaini, I could smell the samagri, and I felt, oh my God, such a beautiful reminder the yagna is going to begin. That feeling, I think that only Prashanti Nilayam can give and nobody can replicate. So far we have spoken of the two Devis or the Matas, that is Mata Lakshmi and Durga. And we have told you the what and the why, but without knowing the how, without having the wisdom to execute the knowledge, nothing can be complete. And that wisdom comes, of course, from Mata Saraswati. And she is verily the form of Vak Shakti, or the spoken word. She's the empress or the patron queen of all wisdom, knowledge, music, creativity, arts. She represents the guna sattva, or serenity. So that is why I remember I told you what Swami incarnated to protect the Vedic scholars, the Vedas, Dharma, and his bhaktas. That is why Swami started. How did Swami translate the experience, or make a working model to experience Mata Saraswati? Through the evening talks that we have in the mandir. These are known as the Jnana Yagna. So Swami started in having these Vedic scholars explain in detail why we do what we do, from the use of kusha grass to the way the homam is to be prepared, how much ghee has to be put. I believe altogether 2,26,270 spoonfuls of ghee are offered into the fire, sacrificial fire. Everything, how the bricks are laid, what is the design, what are the devas, the demigods, the devis, the devas that are worshipped, how the Veda Purusha is invited, everything is done beautifully. And all this is explained in the evenings with these talks. Now this year, because we could not all sit in the Kulwant hall, all these talks were sent to us with Bhagwan's grace through Radio Sai. So we were not deprived, not one tradition was missed. And that's how the Saraswati energy plays out. And about the ghee, there's been some, in the early years, there's always be some people who always know a little bit, pretend to know more than what they actually know. So there was a controversy. Why are we? There were cynics who were doubting what is the point of wasting so many thousands of spoons of ghee into a fire, and they felt that it was such a waste, and instead it should be used for something better. And they questioned it. And I want to read to you what Swami has said in this regard in the early years. And these are Swami's words. He says, these questioning people have consumed hundreds of bags of rice since birth, and they have drunk pots of ghee so far. I'm just adding, they must be obese having done what they have, but Swami didn't say that. Those are my words. Swami goes on to say, let me ask them whether they've had a single day of happiness themselves, or whether they have been able to give single day of joy to their kin and kith. But this yagya gives great joy to many. It gives peace and joy to the world. I and my people are delighted. That is enough compensation. I love the strength of that line that Swami says, I and my people are delighted, and that is enough compensation. When ghee is poured into the fire, those who do not know or believe in the Vedas say it's a waste. Those who do not know agriculture may cry that casting seeds in the furrows is a colossal waste. Do they not know that the tiller will get the grain back 100-fold? It is also like that. Letters reach the addressee only when they are duly stamped with the mantras and dropped into the sacrificial fire. This is a science as much as any other. So these are Swami's words, and let's not forget. And Swami has told us so many times that when these ingredients are put with the right mantras, they create the certain kind of smoke. When this certain kind of smoke rises to the skies, it determines the kind of clouds. The clouds determine the kind of rains. The rains determine the kind of crop. The crop determines the health of those who consume it, their thought process. Everything is an interconnected web. And this is the purpose for which Swami has created this Yagna tradition for the welfare and peace of the world. Swami has done one more great thing. Initially, only the Pandits were chanting Vedas. Then Swami introduced it to his sweet beloved students, and students started chanting. Then Swami opened it to the public, regardless of your gender, your caste, your culture, your country, or your religion. Anybody could chant Vedas. So today we can see a wave of Vedam and Vedic culture is sweeping through Bharat and foreign countries. And this is the spread of Saraswati energy through the globe. Now, Sanatana Dharma tells us that nature is a limb of God, and we all know that in Sanatana Dharma, everything Prakriti is God. We are part of Prakriti. We are not the boss of Prakriti. That is the illusion we need to get out of our heads. And I think I'm running out of time, so I'm just trying to see how I may come to the present. Because everything that we have talked about, Swami says that nature or Bhu Devi is made up of these three Devis, or Sattva, Guna, Tamas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas Gunas, the three qualities represented by the three Devis. Therefore, in order to worship nature, we must worship them in the following form. First is use nature cautiously. Use her bounty, but don't waste. And Swami gave the example, if you can wash your hands with a mug of water, don't keep like a Ganga on and keep washing with the bucket. Use things wisely, and don't waste your time, don't waste your money, don't waste your food and energy. We all know as Sai devotees, we have had so many study circles on sealing on desires. All that remains is to actually imbibe it and practice it. And Swami also says that Navratri is supposed to be a time when you have to recognize the three divine principles merging into one. And every single day, you're so fortunate because we get to interface with this triune of Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati every single day in the form of our own mother. Our mother is Durga because she's the one who makes the effort and the resolve to make us grow. She's Lakshmi because she provides the resources, the food, the nutrition. And she's Saraswati because she tries to develop our thinking, gives us the values, and tries to give us an education. Now, I just want to share one small thing with you that I got some gyan I found on the WhatsApp University of Free Knowledge. And I haven't authenticated this, but if there are any scientists, they might know whether this is correct. It says that we humans receive 50% nuclear DNA from mother and 50% from father. And we receive 100 mitochondrial DNA from mother. And that is very, very special. Mitochondrial DNA is the small circular chromosome found inside the mitochondria. These are found in cells that have been called the powerhouse of the cells. The mitochondria and thus the mitochondrial DNA are passed almost exclusively from mother to offspring through the egg cell. Mitochondria produce ATP. ATP is not Anantapur College, okay? Although it sounds like it. ATP is the energy currency of biological system. For everything you do, you require ATP. ATP is source of energy for doing all activity. For example, for moving your hand, or you consume a billion of ATPs. In short, you receive power, energy from mother. Mother received from her mother, and the ultimate mother received it from Adi Shakti. So how perfect is this understanding? So we are supposed to recognize that and celebrate that on Navratri. And we can do so by recognizing this Icha Shakti, this Kriya Shakti, and this Vak Shakti within the mothers around us. Mothers are not only the ones who bring us into this world through biological process. Many women who play a role of being like mothers to us. Mother-like figures are all also there. And to translate our Navaratri fervor into everyday life lessons, because we are just finishing Dashera today, some people are doing tomorrow, we are on that cusp. How can we make sure that this becomes an integral part of our lives? I think I prayed and I came up with a few suggestions for all of our consideration on this auspicious day. Because we are all embodiments of these three energies of Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, the best way to live our life is to live a clean and honest life, where our thoughts are synchronized with our words and our words are reflected in our actions. Saying something when you're thinking something else and not following up with appropriate action, that is A, inefficient, 2, hypocritical, 3, there is no Trikarna Shuddhi or the coordination of thought, word, and deed. And no matter how cleverly we camouflage our lack of Trikarna Shuddhi, come up with a million excuses, ultimately we will lose our own self-respect and self-confidence. If you look around yourself or examine our own life, we will find it absolutely true. But then there is always this question, should I always speak once? Should one speak one's mind? Is it safe? Because Swami has said we should avoid both unpleasant truth and pleasant untruth. So sometimes when I have something very nasty to say, should I really say it? Now, if our thoughts are based on love and peace, our words can't be that dangerous. But yes, if the Vak Shakti in the form of Saraswati is well nurtured within us, then we will know when to let our silence speak for us. She, Saraswati, will provide that discrimination, and silence speaks loud and clear. Secondly, I think we can also imbibe the three Devis in our daily life if we speak our truth with confidence and courage, and preferably with a degree of calm. Whether we are in a corporate setting, an office, a business, a meeting, whatever, at times we hear decisions being made based on utter violation of the natural order. Profit over purpose sort of situation that violates laws, natural or civil. But if you're in a minority on that committee table, we can wait and make our point. Otherwise, what happens? We are stifling our voice of Shakti within us. We become bitter and frustrated and guilty, and that manifests as illness. Navratri is a time to live upright lives. And you know what people do when something controversial is being discussed? Everybody looks at each other and stays quiet. And as soon nobody speaks in the meeting. When the meeting is over, there are five different private. This was not right. We should not do it. But nobody wants to bell the cat and say it at the right time because everybody wants to avoid an argumentation or a confrontation. Well, then nobody wants to have, what is the point of having a chugli meeting afterwards? If you're so offended, you might as well speak at the right time or learn to live with it, but be assured that there will be very little Trikarna Shuddhi and where is the moral spine gone? Well, as long as, so basically this is a time for inner alignment. Navratri is a time for inner alignment between the heart, where Lakshmi resides, Vak, where Saraswati resides, and Kriya, where Durga resides. When the inner is aligned, my dear sisters and brothers, our navigation through life will be safer and smoother. And Navratri is also a time, many of us observe fasting during Navratri. That's a great time for an inner detox. Now, we don't need your Bollywood celebrities to tell us about intermittent fasting, keto diet, low carb diet, high protein diet, juice fasting. All of this is all inclusive package of the Navratri tradition, which is part of Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma taught us that when the two seasons change, at the cusp of the changing season in spring, when we jump from winter to summer, and at the end of summer in autumn, when we are ready to switch to winter mode, our bodies need a deep cleanse from within, a detox to prepare themselves because the ritus or the winds are changing, seasons are changing, temperatures are going to fluctuate, and that's the time we are likely to catch viruses. So, to improve our immunity, the detox immune building system was already built into the Navratri tradition. The three Devis also represent our sensitive self, our emotion and feelings, and we must nurture this divine aspect of our personality and also express it. We tend to put on this facade of stoicism. Oh, we are beyond expressing. But just think of Swami. Swami, not for a moment, our beloved Bhagwan held back. He expressed his love for us so openly, and towards the end, towards the end of his physical presence amongst us, he was so emotional. I remember in one birthday, he asked the students to sing just one song for him, and instantly, I think it was convocation day, and the students started singing "Humko Tumse Pyar Kitna Hai," and Swami was so overwhelmed and emotional. So, what is wrong in expressing how we feel about others? I'm sure we've all gone through life when we have lost loved ones without telling them how much they meant to us, how much we valued them, and how much we loved them, and how we wish we had one more opportunity to be near them. But I think we should not, Navratri is a reminder. We must start appreciating and celebrating it on a daily basis, starting with our mothers and with the mothers of our children. And my next point was clean yes, virus no. Perhaps Navratri is the best time we can live our lives at their cleanest, with malice towards none, love towards all, discharging our duty with integrity and speaking our truth fearlessly. Now, there'll always be people who are very difficult to love. Let's just leave them alone and move on. But no hatred. Wish them well also. And I think that is where we end up actually imbibing the spirit of Navratri. Every Navratri, the goddess reminds us that the past is gone beyond recovery. The time to move on is now. Let's unwrap this gift called the present. Let's devour the present. Let's enjoy it. Let's not overthink. And the time to express our love and gratitude to all bounty of nature, of life forms around us, for family is right now. We need to practice humility and recognize that we are only a tiny limb in nature, and be subservient that we are part of a bigger network and we can't operate in isolation only thinking about ourselves. So we need to take charge of restoring our inner balance, because once the inner is sorted, once the three Devis are aligned, once the detox has happened and we have purged ourselves of the 10 enemies that poor Shakti has to work so hard, so many times to vanquish, the outer will automatically sort itself out. The outer is only a reflection of what is within us. And Swami has said that his prema for the Vedas is matched only with his love towards humanity. So we also need to love humanity and express it, because that truly is the best way to celebrate Navratri. I just want to end by telling you one last experience that I remember only from memory from the time when I studied in Anantapur College. Now, I don't have a reference for this for you to go back to our radio side. One of the sisters who studied with us in Anantapur shared this experience, and she came from Karnataka, and her family had a huge plantation, and they were coming to Swami from many early years. So the grandmother in the family had a great love for the goddess, the form of Swami as goddess, And she would always say, Swami, we love you, we pray to you, but you must give me darshan as Devi. And Swami would just say yes, yes, and not say anything beyond that. And then one time she was in her plantation in Karnataka. Early in the morning, as was her routine, she left her cottage to walk within the plantation. They had a temple for the Devi. She started walking towards this temple with her basket of flowers in her hand and her puja samagri and little lota and all that. And as she was walking and chanting her Lalita Sahasranama, she started to feel a presence behind her. And after a while, she felt somebody was following her. She felt footsteps. Because in the plantation, lot of dead leaves and twigs were there, the movement of the person behind her or the being behind her was quite audible. So she started to wonder who could be walking behind her early in the morning during Brahma Muhurtam, and she began to feel a little scared. And as she was scared, she started to chant her prayer louder and faster with more devotion and feeling, because she wanted Swami's protection. As she chanted with greater fervor, the footsteps became louder, and as she was nearing the temple, she heard a huge roar. And that was a frightening moment, because she turned around and she saw a divine celestial being seated on a huge lion, beaming with light. And that's all she knows. After some hours, when the plantation workers came, they found her fainted on the ground with all her puja materials scattered hither and thither. And they revived her, and she was in a state of utter bliss. And needless to say, after some time, when they met with Bhagwan again, and before they could say anything, Swami said to them, first, you ask me to give you darshan, and when I come, you don't even offer me the puja materials or the flowers, you drop everything and you start fainting. What drama was that? So, our Navratri has begun. It will be as vibrant, as real, or as ritualistic or ceremonial as we make it out to be. It is our duty, having seen the Sai Shakti and interfaced with her, having seen our Divine Mother and experienced her love over and over again, it is our duty that we actually imbibe her 9 days of hard work and celebrate it. So I think the time to party has begun. This party has to happen every day to celebrate the awesome victory of Mother Shakti amongst us, within us, around us. With that, I thank you for your invite. And I think I'm well within my time, so I'm very grateful to be. Thank you all for having me, and it's been a great pleasure. Happy Dashera, happy Vijayadashmi to all of you. May this coronavirus leave the world fast. May Swami ensure that we have learned our lessons that we may have forgotten and we ended up in this mess. May we always live up to his expectations. Thank you all for having me, and it's been a great pleasure. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. Thanks. Before hand over to Varatharajan, just to mention that this is the first block will occupy capacity of our Zoom Pro version, 100 participants. So thank you very much. And over to Varatharajan.
Sai Ram, Sister Karuna. I express my sincere gratitude to Swami so that we have had you in this session. It was such a wonderful session that you have given, ma'am. And the true essence of Navratri, you have started with how we should treat the 10 demons that are within us, from Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya, and selfishness, injustice, cruelty, and Ahankara. And unless we internalize Swami, the Brahman within us, how these 10 can be won. These 10 internal enemies can be won only by internalizing Brahman within. And by the way, you have beautifully said about the Tamoguna, Rajoguna, and Satvaguna being, the form of Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. And in the Lalita Sahasranama, it is very beautifully said that Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Swarupini. Lalita is called both the Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. So all the three are culminating into one. The deity that we have in Mukambika is the culmination of all the three Shaktis. And the example that you gave of an experience of a lady with the puja material, the same experience Adi Shankara had when he went to that forest where the Devi followed him And
Yes.
when we looked back, it stopped. And where the Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti consolidated itself into one. And Swami has also beautifully said about Mukambika as a silent Devi who blesses her devotees in a very benevolent way. Beautifully said, Karunaji. Your knowledge is something so vast. I mean, it was coming out like a river. I was truly enjoying it, and I hope and sure that the members of Thane Samiti also would have enjoyed it. And we take this opportunity to thank you once again, Sai Ram.
Sairam. And it was not my wisdom or anything. These are all based on Swami's discourses. So basically plagiarized wisdom. And Swami has given us everything. We just have to read Satyasai Speaks. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you, but it is my duty to thank you personally. Thanks a lot, Sai Ram.
Thank you. My pleasure. Sairam to all of you. Thank you all.
Sairam Varadarajan, we can chant Shanti Mantra and conclude the
Yeah,
class.
yes, thank you. समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोका सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः
जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।